Hey, I'm Molly Sims.
And I'm Emese Gormley. We're two girls obsessed with one thing, beauty.
And by that, we mean everything that makes you look
And feel
beautiful.
We're calling on our favorite health experts, industry insiders, and friends to answer all your beauty questions.
With a drink in hand.
Definitely with a drink in hand.
You're listening to Lipstick on the Rim with Molly Sims.
You know, there's nothing I love more than momming. Being a momming. But I have to say, it's also freaking tough sometimes.
You know what always reminds me of that old adage, little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems?
Yep, I do.
It's one of the hardest things to navigate.
And it has become especially difficult to navigate in where we are with social media. And you add in technology, you add in, life coming out of COVID. We are so excited for today's guest. And if you haven't read his book, you're going to at the end of this hour. We have renowned social psychologist Jonathan Haidt. He is going to dive into all the challenges of navigating parenthood in the anxious generation. He's a professor at NYU Stern School of Business and the author of several influential books, including The Righteous Mind and The Coddling of the American Mind, which I've read. His latest work, The Anxious Generation, explores the profound effects of social media on youth mental health. The profound effects, that is plural, on our kids' mental health, with over 100 academic articles and recognition, one of Prospect Magazine's top 50 thinkers. Jonathan's going to give his insight, and it's valuable, guys. And I hope all of you who are parents or not parents or yet to be parents really listen and try to support our children in today's anxiety-ridden landscape. Jonathan, we are so excited to have you here. We're going to be navigating parenthood during an anxious generation. And I know we're doing a lot of things wrong, but today's focus is really helping you help us discuss the practical strategies for fostering resilience and understanding our next generation. Emese has 3 girls, 4, 7, and 11.
Yeah, five, almost 8, and 10.
And I'm 7, 9, and 12. So we're on the cusp of everything going wrong.
Oh, yes.
Send
oh,
help.
yes. This is the age at which what was already worrisome, seeing our kids glued to screens. And then when they start getting the phones, things really change in a qualitative way. And so I'm hopeful that your 12-year-old, actually, can you tell me, Molly, does your 12-year-old have his or her own smartphone yet?
No, he does not. And he will not. He is in 6th grade.
Good.
He does not have a phone. None of my kids have phones.
Well, thanks so much for having me on. What we're up against here is a collective action problem. That is, we're in this weird situation in which all of us had to give our kids phones way earlier than we want, because our kids come to us and say, Mom, I'm the only one who doesn't have a phone. The kids are making fun of me. I'm excluded. And that breaks our hearts. And we say, okay. And then they come to us and they say, Mom, I'm the only one who isn't on Instagram. Everyone's talking about me. Everyone's, and again, we give in.
Everyone
and that's
does
what got us into
Snapchat.
this.
That's how these kids, talk to each other. I have heard that remark, and granted, I'm sure it's true. But yes, I've heard it over and over and over. And I've also heard, the moms also start guilting the other moms. I'm like, just give him the phone. Like, it doesn't, what is it going to matter? Don't you want to reach him? So listen, I do want to take it back just a little bit. And why did you write The Anxious Generation? Because it is blown up. It is a bestseller, and it is fantastic.
And everyone has been talking about it since it came out.
Okay, well, that's what I love to hear. So the reason that I wrote it, my main research as a social psychologist has been on political psychology, moral psychology. And in 2014, 2015, everything got weird. Like, our politics got weird, and it's never recovered. And it's going to get a lot weirder in the coming years. And so I've been studying why is this happening? And all signs point to the radical change in communication technology, social media. The early internet was wonderful, and we thought it was going to be good for democracy, but now it's much darker. So I got a contract to write a book on what social media is doing to democracy. I started writing that book. And because I had a lot of research left over from my last book, The Coddling of the American Mind, I've been tracking teen mental health since 2015, writing about why are teens so depressed and anxious. And in the coddling, we focused on overprotection, that we've been coddling our kids. We've been overprotecting them. We don't let them take risks. We don't let them out to play. So we have to change this. We've got to give our kids back a normal, healthy human childhood. And in that book, which I wrote with Greg Lukianoff in 2016, we said, social media might have played a role. We don't know. The timing is right. It fits, but we don't know. We don't have clear evidence. That was 2016 2017, we were writing that. By 2019, the evidence was really coming in. And so I thought, well, I'm writing this book on democracy. Let me start the first chapter will be what happened to teens when they all went on social media. They went to, real phone-based childhood around 2011, 2012. 2012 is when Instagram comes out. What happened to teens in the early 2010s when they moved their social life onto social media platforms? Answer, they became anxious and depressed almost immediately, within a year or two. And so then I was going to move on and say, okay, now, that was chapter 1. Look what happened to the kids. Now let's look at what's happening to democracy. And by the time I finished that first chapter and I laid out all the evidence and I saw these graphs that are like hockey sticks shooting up to the sky for rates of depression, anxiety, and self-harm, hospitalizations for self-harm. And then when I saw that it was international, when I saw that we had the same pattern in Canada, the UK, Australia, the Scandinavian countries, then it was like, oh my God, this should be the biggest news story of our time. I mean, this is much bigger than COVID because this is all kids around the world forever until we get this right. So I felt like I can't just have this be chapter 1 and then go, like, I have to really focus on this. And I've got to get this out fast because we can't wait a year. Like we got to change this now, like in back then it was 2 years ago, but we got to change this as soon as we can. So that's why I split the book in 2 and I put all my effort over the last 2 years and over the next 3 years, all my effort is going into rolling back the phone-based childhood and restoring a play-based childhood.
Do you think that COVID compounded, like having a global pandemic, it isolated people so much that, it did allow for an increase in usage of social media because everybody was shut down? I mean, my niece at the time was a freshman in high school, and it really impacted her experience, right? I mean, she was an only child, and she was shut into this house where her mother, she was a single-parent household. And I think, do you think that further impacted how social media access kind of became even more important and relevant to that generation?
Yes, definitely. So the 2 points. The first is that COVID did not cause this. This all started in 2012. This is not, no one can say, oh, the kids are in a mess because of COVID. No, this started in 2012. It's nothing to do with COVID. But as you say, boy, did COVID make things worse. In 2019, when I started writing about this, I was drawing on the work of Jean Twenge, a friend of mine, another researcher who's written books. She was the first to really call attention to the social media hypothesis. What I was saying back then was, what did kids need in 2019? More playtime, less screens. And what do they get in 2020? No more outdoor play because you might catch COVID. You can't play outside. You can't get near your friends. Can't go to school. How about you just spend all day on screens? But yes, COVID made things much, much worse. And I think that's why things are moving so fast now, is we were all confused. I mean, 2020 was an insane year. It wasn't just COVID. It was the politics. It was a massive cultural time. And by 2022, 2023, we're kind of coming out of it. And now we can see, wait, our kids are a wreck. Our kids are doing horribly. We all see it. And that's why I think when my book came out in March of 2024, everyone was ready for action. But I got to say, it's really has been like the giant global mom army. And what I mean by that is, I'll talk to, men will say, hey, I really liked your book. Oh yeah, I see that happening. But moms are like, oh my God, thank you. We're on that. We want to do something. Moms were much more sensitive to what was happening to the kids. I think mothers also just take, often on average, they take the parenting more as their personal project, but the husbands or fathers are often a little bit more like, not quite as involved. So the passion among mothers around the world has been extraordinary and just really exciting to see.
I love hearing that. And I love when you describe this as the global mom army. Speaking of the global mom army, what has been the biggest discovery you've made with having social media impact our children? How does it affect the friendship, the romantic relationships, the education, peer to peer?
Yeah. I guess in a sense, the biggest discovery I've made is that it's not just mental health. It's all the things you just said. So one way to think about it is this. I'm guessing that most of your listeners are millennials. I'm the last of the baby boomers born in 1963. But everyone in my generation, before me, Gen X, and then the older millennials, all of us went out to play. All of us had unsupervised time. All of us had a chance to be kids. You probably grew up, you probably got a flip phone in high school, but you didn't get a smartphone until college or later, probably. So what I want you to do, everybody listening to this, especially if you're older, if you had freedom as a child, what I want you to do is imagine your childhood and think of all the most exciting things you ever did, all the adventures, all the risks, all the excitement, all the laughter, all the shared jokes with your friends. Think of all of that. And now we're going to start taking stuff out. So take out, think of all the times you ever touched a friend, like you put your arm around or you held hands or anything.
Practice
Take
dance
out-
routines.
Oh, yeah.
Any reason why you ever touched a friend, take out 70% of that, because our kids aren't together. They literally are not seeing each other in person anymore outside of school. They're communicating on the phones. Think of all the sunshine that came into your eyes during your childhood. Take out 50% of that because they're inside on screens. Their vision is deteriorating around the world. Eyeballs are lengthening.
That's crazy.
Think about all the laughter, all the shared laughter. Think about every time you ever laughed with a friend. Take out 70% of that. Think of all the risk you took. Take out 70%. Did you have any hobbies? Remove all of those. No one has time for hobbies. They're on their phones 10 hours a day on average, 5 hours a day just on social media. There's no time for any hobbies. How about books? Did you read any books as a kid? Take out almost all of those. There's no time. So if you take almost everything out of childhood and instead you replace it with literally hours and hours of 15-second videos, that's the main thing for boys and girls. For the girls, there's also the swiping and posting and commenting. For the boys, there's a huge amount of video games and pornography. So you take out almost everything that's good in childhood and you replace it with stuff that's bad. And now, what's going to happen? It's going to block it's not just going to make kids anxious and depressed. It's going to block their social development, their cognitive development, their creativity, their physical exercise. So, what's happened is just the transformation of childhood, and we've got to stop it now. This phone-based childhood is only 12 years old. It began in 2012. We don't have to keep it. We can say no.
What do you say to parents? And I'll be really honest. I have this conversation at home with my husband. We live in a small town, I mentioned, and it's idyllic, right? I mean, kids walk to school. My husband is not comfortable letting our two daughters walk to school. It is probably less than half a mile. In stop signs, we have crossing guards. And I go, I used to walk to school by myself. I used to rollerblade, ride down a hill in a major city like Toronto, which is where I grew up. And he goes, it's just not the same anymore. And I feel like when I have this conversation about what do we allow for our kids to do outside of the home, walk to town, walk to do this, people will say that are naysayers on it, we don't live in that same generation that we grew up in. And I don't know that I agree. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Sure. No, your husband is right. It's not the same as it was. It's so much safer now. I grew up during a huge crime wave. I grew up in the 1970s. I mean, the crime was just out of control. There were crazy people running around killing people. There were, serial killers. There were drunk drivers. I mean, it used to be dangerous, and some kids died. Since the 90s, the death rate for kids from all causes is down and down and down and down, with one big exception: suicide. It used to be that if a child died, it probably wasn't by his own hand. Right. And now, if a child dies, it's probably by his or her own hand. So this is what we've done. We've locked, as the world started getting really safe in the 90s, at least in America, I don't know about Canada, but in America, the crime rate plummeted in the 1990s. And that's actually coincidentally the decade when we decided it was too dangerous to let our kids out. Oh, and, the internet is coming in and the kids love it. And, so let's let the kids just be up in their rooms on on our computer, or eventually on their own, their own laptop or their own iPhone. So we don't live in that world. But your husband is right about one thing. One thing as something that's gotten worse, which is we don't trust our neighbors anymore.
I agree with that.
The world I grew up in had a lot of crime, but people kind of knew their neighbors. People are outside a lot. And for a variety of reasons, including even just the spread of air conditioning and television. It used to be people were outside on their front porch, and once you get air conditioning and television, everything kind of moves into your living room and you don't see your neighbors as much. So there are a lot of reasons why trust in our neighbors declined. And that's why the only way we're going to do this, if we want to restore a play-based childhood, is you can't just kick your kids out and say, hey, get out of here, don't come home till the streetlights come on, which is what my parents did. Stop watching television, get out of here, go out and play.
I would be on my moped. I had a moped. I can't even believe.
Yes, you took risks.
I'm 51, so I'm Gen X. I was born in 1973, but I was on my moped. She couldn't find me. She's like, oh, I was down with my elderly neighbors who were like in their 80s, like visiting them. Then I was over at the other neighbor's house. Like, I roamed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
exactly.
I think I'm actually like curious what your thoughts are on this. I think so much we now, as the parents I'm around, and I live in a very type A community. Everybody wants their kids to be a pro athlete. And that's a whole other conversation. But I sometimes wonder if so much of this, our kids just need to be in their home as opposed to outside playing, is a control thing. Because I do think that we have a generation now of parents where we want to control everything, their schedules, their playtime, what they're eating, when they're eating. Like, it used to be a little more loosey-goosey. Like, I was a latchkey kid. I had a key around my neck, and I took a bus by myself to get home. My parents didn't really know when I was eating unless we sat down at the family table at night together. But that was it. So do you think that's part of it, is that we have a generation of parents that are much more controlling than our parents were?
Oh, yeah. No, I think that's definitely true. That's a big part of it. One big sociological change that happens in the 1990s is that, at least in the United States and the UK, and I imagine Canada, things get more competitive. The economy gets more competitive. The return on investment of going to a top college gets higher. Everyone gets more competitive. And now parents begin to see their job as, my job is to get you into a top college. And it's not, there's a dictum we quote in the Coddling the American Mind. The job of a parent is to work him or herself out of a job. Your job is to get to the point where by the time your kid is 18, they could actually function in the world. And you got that practice. You got that practice by riding around in your moped and visiting people and making decisions for yourself. And we don't let kids get that for a very long time. So that's encouraged much more of what's called concierge parenting or snowplow parenting or helicopter parenting. You want to always be there, always looking out for problems, so your kid never has to learn to look out for problems on his or her own. And then the other piece of it is, before the iPhone, before every kids had iPhones around 2011, 2012, they started getting them. You couldn't track your child. Now, with flip phones, you could call them. That's true. But we had the ability to see a little dot on a map. And that turns out, while it's very comforting as a parent, it turns out to be a sick thing to do, because now we feel like I have to know where my kid is all the time. And wait, what's he doing over there? And so it encourages a constant surveillance state. And you can't, if you grow up in a surveillance state, you're not prepared for life in a free country, in a democracy where you're self-supervising, you're self-governing. So the technology has had pervasive effects, not just on the kids, but you're right, on us parents. And
I think there's a fine line, and I go through this struggle all the time. Am I helicoptering or am I advocating? And I struggle, because I thrive on structure. I thrive on plans. I try to, 3 kids, both of us work. But I do struggle. The one thing I want to ask you is, a lot of parents will be like, well, I need my kid to be able to reach me. That's why they have the phone.
No, give them a flip phone. They don't need an iPhone for that.
Correct.
Give them a flip phone or a phone watch.
Okay. Jonathan, set your rules. What should we do? When do you give your kid your phone? Do you set limits?
Well, I can tell you how I have parented, which is, I think, better than average, but not ideal. Or I say better than average in the sense that, like, I knew a lot of this stuff a number of years ago. So I started, my daughter is a sophomore in high school. She's the only one who doesn't have Snapchat. And I've said, no way. Snapchat, we now know from leaked memos and depositions, 10,000 reports of sextortion every month come in at Snapchat. 10,000. That's just the ones that are reported.
I literally had a mom say, I told you, that's how they communicate. They're going to be left out and be weird if they don't have Snapchat.
I've heard that too.
Verbatim.
Right. Yep, exactly. Okay, wait. So this is the crucial point. She's right. And so my goal, what I'm doing with the book and with the movement, because it started as a book, but now if you go to anxiousgeneration.com, it's a movement bringing in parents, teachers, legislators around the world. That mom is right, and we have to change that. And what I mean by that is, As long as everyone else is on smartphones and Snapchat by the time they're 10, then there's a lot of pressure on all of us to give in. And that is horrible for everyone. So what we have to do is we have to coalesce around 4 simple norms, which are all doable if we do them together. So here they are. Here's how we roll back the phone-based childhood. 1, no smartphone till high school. Just, you can give them a flip phone or a phone watch, but we've got to at least let them get through early puberty, especially the girls. There's some clear evidence. Around 11 to 13 is when you do the most damage to a girl if she's on social media. So get this all out of middle school and elementary school. No kid in those schools should have a smartphone. If you want to call them, give them a phone watch. I gave my daughter a Gizmo, a big pink thing when she was in 3rd grade. It worked fine. Anyway, second norm, no social media till 16. Social media is wildly, wildly inappropriate as a way to hook your kids up, not just to each other, but to every man around the world who wants to contact your kids. It's a way to hook them up to every company that wants to sell them something. It's a way to make it easy for them to buy drugs and guns even. I mean, Snapchat is insane what it does for kids, the possibilities it opens up for them to interact with strange adults around the world. So that's the second norm, no smartphone, no social media till 16. Let's at least have that as a norm. I hope we can get that as a law, but even if we never get that as a law, if half of us do it as a norm, then our kid can't say, Mom, I'm the only one.
Right.
She'll just say,
well,
Mom, some of the kids have Snapchat and some don't. So we've already got no smartphone till high school, no social media till 16. The third norm is phone-free schools. A lot of schools say they ban phones, but what they mean is you can't take your phone out during class. You have to hide it in your book, or you have to go to the bathroom. That's what my kids tell me in New York City public schools. And the rule has to be, you come in, you put the phone in a locked pouch or an envelope in the front of the classroom, and you don't get it back till the end of the day. And in that way, what happens, every school that goes phone free, it's the most amazing thing. You always hear the same thing. You look at the news reports, you always have the same thing. They say, we hear laughter in the hallways again, because hallways have been silent. Lunchrooms are quiet. Playgrounds sometimes are quiet because everyone's on their phone. And they're missing out on social connection. And they're lonely. Our kids are so lonely. The more connected you are, the lonelier you are, because you have no time to actually invest in a close friend. So phone-free schools is crucial, and that's happening very fast. If your kid's school allows the kid to keep a phone in their pocket, please get together other parents and go protest. You say, the evidence is really clear. These things distract the hell out of our kids. They can't pay attention. Please go phone-free. And the fourth norm is far more independence, free play, and responsibility in the real world. We have to give kids back a play-based childhood. And I'll tell you some ways to do that. But I want to make the point that this isn't just about taking away the phones and saying, we got your phones, now do nothing. What we have to do is return to the point where we can say, you have the space and the time to do things with your friends. And I'm not going to be on top of you all the time. In fact, I want you to be independent. I want you to be out with your friends. I'm not talking 3 and 4-year-olds, but by 7 and 8, and certainly by 9, by 4th grade, kids should be out doing things with their friends. And so if you say to your kids, it's not just me taking this way. Say, I've spoken with the parents of your 4 best friends, and we are all together on this. We want you to have a great childhood. We want you kids to have the kind of childhoods that we had and that your grandparents had. We have some adventure, you have some fun. Everyone else is just sitting there scrolling. Sure, they're connecting on Snapchat, but they're just sitting there doing nothing with their lives. We want you guys to have fun. So, every Friday, if you want to have a 3-4-way sleepover, do it. If you want to move around between our houses, if you can walk or ride bicycles to houses, do it. If you guys want to we'll raise your allowance. Go buy candy for all we care. Go do something. And the psychological benefits of going on their own at age 8 or 9 to buy candy vastly outweigh, yes, I understand, candy and sugar. We don't want too much of that. But, our kids are starving for independence.
I will take that over, not connecting and
an anxiety disorder and self-harm.
100%.
Yeah. Biggest thing, my kid, it's 5th grade. They all get to walk to town. And I was like, oh my God, they're too young. And my husband was like, no way.
They're not.
And it's so
funny. We did it when we were younger.
I have this green light card that you can track where, and again, to your point, surveilling, right? But I can see that she goes to CVS, she buys gum. She goes to a candy store and called Sweet Nothings. And this is what they do. And this is their rite of passage. They do 3 stops, CVS, Sweet Nothings, and Starbucks. And they think they have lived.
Yep. Yes. They're starving for it, for normal human experience. That's great. And I'll give you a tip. So, I live in New York City, in Greenwich Village, and especially when my wife and I moved here in 2011, when our kids were very young, New York City was very safe. I mean, it's still a pretty safe big city, but it was very safe in the 2010s. And we encouraged our kids to go out and do errands and things in the neighborhood. But when they were even younger, when they were like 6, 7, 8, we would take them to Liberty Science Museum, this great science museum just across the Hudson River. And then they knew their way around the museum. So we would just say, if I took them, I'd say, okay, I'm going to sit here in the cafeteria. You know where I am. Go explore.
Oh my
And it
God,
was like,
I
really?
wish I could be like that.
Well, why not? Why can't you?
No, I know.
What
I'm
are you
going to
afraid
try.
of? What are you afraid of?
Oh, what am I afraid of? Oh, I'll just list. Okay, they're going to get lost. They're going to get someone's going to take them.
Yeah, they might get lost in the museum. What would happen if they get lost in the museum? You think they're just going to stay lost? They need to get lost and then find their way back. They need to learn how to ask another human being for directions. The young generation has a lot of trouble asking for directions because they're not used to talking to strangers.
It's like my husband. He never wants to ask for directions.
That's another story.
That's
Adult man, that's a different story.
That's a male, female thing.
Yeah.
Literally, anyway, we digress.
Okay, let's take your fourth grader. Suppose you took her and 2 of her friends to a science museum or a kids museum or anything. Why wouldn't you let them go explore on their own and go look at exhibits at their own pace? Why would you want to be with them?
I don't know. I honestly, I would think like, oh my God,
because we're so afraid.
Like the parent
we're so afraid.
Would be
it's irrational
mad at
fear.
me if I lost her child, or I don't know. Just to
it's
be
irrational.
Really truthful,
it's an irrational fear.
An irrational
we pick it up from each other. We pick it up from each other. And I think one of you said earlier that we're afraid of being judged by other parents. And I do see this. And it's especially on the moms. I mean, if a guy gives his kid some independence, he's toughening them up. But I do see much more pressure on moms to that a good mother is one who's always vigilant, always watching out for their safety, never lets them learn how to keep themselves safe.
No, I mean, I think we're both guilty of that.
I'm super guilty of it. I try to control everything.
But I think I see your point, and I think it's such a lesson learned because our kids do. I mean, I was much more independent as a 10-year-old than my daughter is. I let myself in and out of my apartment. I grew up in an apartment. I let myself in and out. I rode public transportation by myself at 9, 10 years old in a massive city. With no cell phone, obviously, at the time. I mean, I'm 46. Right. And I think I think part of it is this, I mean, my husband and I will get into arguments about it because I'm like, it's safer now. Like, I agree with you. I actually think we live in a safer world. You hear less. I mean, my biggest fear is an abduction. Like, I'll be really honest. I get worried someone's going to snatch my kid, throw them in a car and drive away. That is my biggest fear.
Yeah.
And it's, I get it. They're going to get hit by a car faster than they will get abducted.
These are the worst things that we can imagine. And the fear is put into our head by a media system that's extremely rare. The FBI, in the United States, the FBI keeps track of these things. And the number of true kidnappings, like by a stranger, is something on the order to 100 to 200 a year in the whole country. It almost never happens. And half the time, or a third of the time, the kids aren't even reported missing. That is, it's kids who are throwaway kids who who are shuttling between, it's kids who don't have someone looking out for them. If you're raising your kids in a relatively safe community, the chance of, it essentially doesn't happen. And so we're freaking each other out by this possibility. And so I'd like to recommend to both of you and to all of your listeners, let's turn to what you can do to help to give more independence, to give your kid this, because I know it's hard. The answer is a woman named Lenore Skenazy, who wrote a book called Free Range Kids. And this book transformed my wife and me. It transformed our parenting because we met her through a mutual friend in New York City when we moved here, and we read her book. And she became famous in around 2009, I think it was, for letting her 9-year-old son ride the New York City subway system by himself. He knew he could get home from Bloomingdale's or wherever it was. Like, can I go home? Let me do it. And he wanted to do it for a long time. And she called her husband, said, okay, he's going to come home, expect him. He didn't have a phone, but he had a map and he had a couple of quarters to make phone calls. Back then, there were still phones. And he did it. And he was thrilled. And then he was much more independent after that. And Lenore went on TV and talked about it. She's a journalist. And people were horrified. How can you do this to your kid? And she was called America's worst mom. So, but
She
actually,
might be
she's
now
America's
best mom.
Yeah.
She really is. She really is. And so it's because of her. And so she wrote this great book, Free Range Kids. It's because of her that my wife and I started letting our kids out to do errands. And I don't want to come across like, oh yeah, we just let them out. It was great. No, the first time you let them out, you're terrified. I mean, I would send them out to Washington Square Park. And if they weren't home, immediately, or when they said, I would say, they've been abducted. Oh my God, what happened? Should I go out and look for them? And then they come in 10 minutes later, they're really happy. So we have to get over our fears. So let me tell you a very simple way that we can all get over our fears. So Lenore, I encouraged me and some others, we encouraged Lenore to start a new organization to give her a much bigger platform. It's called Let Grow. So I want everybody to go to letgrow.org, letgrow.org, and then look up the Let Grow experience. It's a very simple project. It's designed to be done at schools, but you can do it at home perfectly well. All it is you print out the sheet, you'll get the instructions. Your kid comes to you and says, "Mom, I'm supposed to find something that I can do by myself with your permission, but without you. And what I'd like to do, Mom, is I think that I can walk our dog. I've been with you on dog walks 50 times. I think I can do it without you. Or I think I can go to the store 3 blocks away or a half mile away. I can walk there, or I can ride my bicycle, whatever it is. Let me be useful. I want, next time you have something you need, send me to the store." So you pick something like that. Maybe it's do your own laundry, make your own breakfast, make breakfast for the family, something. And especially when you send the kids out of the home, that's the best kind, because 2 things happen. The kids are sometimes a little nervous, but then when they succeed, you always hear the same thing. They're jumping up and down. My daughter was, when I'm sitting in my office here at NYU, when she was 6 years old, my wife gave her lunch to bring to me in a bag, and she had to cross the street to get to my office. And when she saw me, she was just like, I've never seen her so excited. All choked up. But,
No, these things are meaningful, and you see how much pride and joy the kids take. Brooks is like, I just think you should just let me go to Chipotle with my friends. Like, what does it
yes,
matter?
You should.
Like,
yes,
literally, we
have
had
to.
this conversation, I don't know, 3 days ago. Guess what? Someone's going to Chipotle.
Yep. Someone gets to go to Chipotle today.
Gonna go to Chipotle.
All right. That is a victory. But let me I'm going to finish up on one point about the Let Grow project. Okay. So we're doing it in schools all around the country, and the results on the kids are amazing. It reduces anxiety levels because kids discover they're actually capable of doing things. They're more confident. So it works on the kids. But here's the really cool thing about the project. It has an anti-anxiety effect on the parents, because when the parents do it, like, you're probably thinking like, what age is the right age? You're not old enough. But if the school says to you, okay, 3rd grade, I'm pushing for every 3rd grade to do this. If the school says to you, 3rd grade, we think you can have your kid do this project, the first time you do it, you're scared. And when the first time we sent my son across the street to a supermarket, I followed him, 30 yards behind. Like, I didn't let him see me, but I was scared. But he did it, and he was a little nervous. And he said people were looking at him funny because they'd never seen a kid unsupervised before. But the first time, the parents are scared. And the second time, the parents are less scared, because that's how habituation works. That's the treatment for anxiety, is exposure. And by the 3rd time, you're not scared anymore. And that happened when we let our kids walk to school. When we let my son, he just started college, but when he was in 4th grade, we let him walk to school. And again, I followed him at a distance, and he didn't know, but once we got over our fear, he's great. He knows the New York City subway system better than I do. He did by the time he was in 6th grade. So the Let Grow project doesn't just help the kids develop confidence. It helps the parents develop confidence in the kids.
I told you this story. Back to my going to town, the first time I said, okay, because all the other kids were going, her like little group of friends. And I said to Mike, I was like, this is where we have to give. There's certain things we won't give on. This is what we give. I sat in a bush behind a coffee shop, okay? And I went with another mom who had just moved back from England, and the 2 of us were hiding behind a bush across the street from the candy store, and I got busted by her one friend.
What do you mean?
Oh,
they're like, is that Maeve's mom?
I'm literally in a bush, and I'm poking my head over, and this one girl walks out, and she goes like this, points her finger at me, and Maeve walks out, and she like just puts her head down, keeps walking. And I was like, oh my God, I got caught. I got caught.
That's
But to
right.
your point, by the third time, I wasn't tracking where she
Exactly.
was.
That's right. That's right. This is our problem. It's not their problem.
You're right.
We're overprotective. We're stunting their growth. We're denying them fun. We're denying them independence. We have to get over this. So try to imagine what your parents would say if your parents could see you squatting in that bush. What would they say?
Can you imagine?
I mean, I was literally in a bush. Oh,
Okay, I
anyhow.
want to switch gears a little bit. Education and, of
Mhm.
course, sports. We're both big sports moms. But also, I think consciously or subconsciously, having to do something, having to be somewhere, having to be a part of something
Mhm.
has led me to be a sports mom. So they're not on the phone.
Yeah.
They're not, they have something to do. They're not sitting and
They're busy.
scrolling. They're busy. But I
Right.
think there's a fine line of what has happened, right? So I live in Los Angeles. We have crazy academic schools. Will you talk a little bit about the education and the tiger mom and the tigerness of all of it? But then also with the sports has become, now you have to one sport, right? Your path is being done at 5.
So let's start with sports. So the phones and social media will expand to fill every moment. Your kids probably take their phones into the bathroom. They sit on the toilet with them. My students at NYU tell me that now that the phone is waterproof, some of them take their phones into the shower.
Oh my God.
Shut
The
up.
phone will fill. No, they did mostly listen to music, but they'll check text or they'll, I mean, you got the conditioner in your hair. What else are you going to do? Scroll. So the phones will expand to
Crazy.
fill every moment that you let it. And so the more you can structure the day to keep the phones out, the more you can get your kids back to the point where the phone is a tool that they use for an hour or two a day, instead of it's the thing that governs their life for 10 to 15 hours a day. So if you have, especially if you have phone-free schools from 8:30 to 3, whatever time, if they don't have their phones then, that's fantastic. And then where do they go? If they go to some sort of team sport activity, then now you're all the way up to 5 or 6 o'clock. So that's great. Also important is the fact that team sports are movement, whereas phone stuff is stationary. Team sports are often outside, whereas phone use is usually inside. So they're getting movement, they're getting sunlight, they're getting social interaction. I've seen some research saying that team sports are better than individual sports, and I think that's true. My kids both run track. I think if they were on the basketball or the soccer team, they would get more benefits of group interaction. But what I've seen, the track team has been so great for both of them. So that's where their friends are. They're physical. So all of this is good about sports. The one thing to watch out for with team sports, the way Americans do it, and especially more educated or upper SES Americans do it, is it's not about fun. It's not about kids getting together and having fun. It's about competition, and it's about training, and it's about getting into college. So that kills a lot of the benefits of it. It can become just another stressor. I think broken bones are going up in sports.
Correct.
Because the kids they're just doing one sport. They're concentrating on one thing. They're not overusing certain joints. And ironically, broken bones outside of sports are going down and down and down, especially for boys. It used to be that teen boys were the most likely to break a bone. You and I probably remember that you sometimes would see kids with a cast in school. A kid would come in with a cast and you'd sign it. That doesn't happen anymore because no boy is doing anything that could break a bone. They're just doing video games and porn.
Lord, my child is he's probably got 20 broken bones. I mean, I do not one sport. He plays basketball. He plays lacrosse. He plays flag football. I mean, I keep him as busy, and he loves it.
That's good. Okay, good. But just tell me, is it the situation where the coach is always telling them what to do, or do they have a lot of freedom? They just play pickup games and they just hang out with each other without a coach?
Always a coach.
Okay, so that's a problem. It's much better than just them being home on their phone. So I'm not saying it's bad. What you're doing is good. But the way we do it robs it of a lot of the nutritional value. Because the most valuable thing for kids is to hang out with other kids where they decide what they're going to do. They make the rules. They enforce the rules. So when I was in I think fifth grade, my friend and I we would cut through this church parking lot, and there was a church school, and the kids, they didn't like it that we cut through their parking lot. So they taunted us and we taunted them back. And somehow we started throwing rocks at each other. And then we had to go. It was time for dinner. And then we agreed, okay, let's meet back here tomorrow to continue our rock fight. But we made rules. And the rule is you can only use small rocks and you can't aim at the head. And my point is, this was a pickup game where boys were getting together to agree on rules of engagement. It was so exciting. It was incredibly exciting. Was it risky? Yes, but that's part of the point. Risk is actually an essential feature of childhood, and we were managing those risks and we were learning how to negotiate. Whereas on a video game, there's no negotiation, there's no adjudication because the video game decides exactly what's in and out. You don't have to say, was that out of bounds? And the same thing with the team sports. The coaches and referees decide everything. The kids don't get to decide how to enforce the rules. So team sports are great, but by far, but somewhat better would be if they just go out with some friends and set up a soccer field or go out and play basketball by themselves.
And that's what's so great about summer. So I keep summer as honestly as unstructured as I can.
Great.
And the pickup games, the pickleball, the soccer outside, going to the beach, surfing, and I've noticed even on the weekends, he does a really long practice, and then all they want to do, Mom, we just want to play. We don't want to do. We don't have to do anything. And they will literally make forts. They will swim. They will try to get me to give them their iPads. But it's it's just a slippery slope. It's you're damned if you do sometimes and you're damned if you don't.
Well, no, wait. No, hold on a second, because you just laid out the kind of summer that kids need, which is where they finally get free time. They might get bored. They might actually get bored. And they might say, Mom, we're bored. Give us the iPad. And if you don't give them the iPad, what are they going to do? They're going to think of something to do, and then they'll have fun. So let me put in a picture. As long as we're talking about summer, one of the best single pieces of advice I can give everyone, after doing the Let Grow experience in your family, the next, and maybe even bigger, is find a summer camp, especially if your kids are around 7 or 8, 9. Find a summer camp. Send them at least for a full month every summer. Try to find one camp they can go back to every summer. It has to be phone free. Never send your kid to a camp if it lets the kids keep the phone. Just never do that, because you're missing the best opportunity ever. And don't send them to coding camp or dancing camp or photography camp. Send them to a camp that is just off in the woods and they do things and it's physical and there's no electronics. You always hear the same thing. The kid comes back from camp and parents say, my daughter, who was so glum and morose and anxious, she came back from camp and it's the lovely 11-year-old that I used to have. And then they get back on their phones, and a few weeks later, they're back glum and morose. But summer camp is the most powerful way we have to detox kids, because they're not alone. They're not cut off. They're intensely with other kids.
Oh my God, you're amazing.
Yeah, I mean,
I can you just come live with us?
Yeah. Do you want to parent some 6 children that we have between the 2 of us?
We always do a little rapid fire here on Lipstick on the Rim.
Okay.
What's something you've always wanted to learn?
Well, let's see. I speak French and Spanish. I wish I played guitar. I do wish I played. I can do some chords, but I really wish I'd gotten good at guitar, and I didn't put in the time.
What's a fear you've overcome?
A fear I've overcome. Well, definitely, letting my kids out. That was, that was certainly one. I think, public speaking, I was never terribly afraid of it. But when I started as a professor, started teaching lecture classes, you're 20, 29, 30 years old in front of an auditorium of, 300 students. It's anxiety provoking, but with practice, you get good at it and then it's fun.
I don't know the answer to this. I'm curious. Are you a planner or you go with the flow?
I'm a planner, unfortunately. Well, I shouldn't say unfortunately. Planner, what we're talking about is the big 5 personality trait of conscientiousness. And I'm pretty high on conscientiousness. And that means I'm less fun to be with. I have less fun, but I get a lot more done. And, I could never have written this book in a year and a half, in 2 years, if I wasn't very conscientious and able to structure my time and resist temptation. So yeah, I'm a planner.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee. For a while, I was off coffee because I thought that it was bad for me and I thought it had too much caffeine. And that might have been true once, but I discovered at the age of, 60, actually, wait, it's not really interfering with my sleep when I have a cup in the afternoon.
What's your biggest vice?
My biggest vice, This is going to sound terrible, but I don't think I really have vices. I'm a pretty disciplined person. I love what I do, so I'm always putting my attention into working. If I have a chance to read, I'll read something related to these things I'm studying. But if you ask my wife, she would say my biggest vice is that I'm a workaholic. She'd say that I spend too much time thinking about work, and I therefore miss out on some other aspects of life. And I think she's right.
You're giving back to the world.
I have a question. What gives you anxiety?
Well, definitely any sort of conflict on Twitter. And I've never been heavily on Twitter, but at times, for my profession and to get the word out and to, especially with studying politics and morality, but anytime someone starts criticizing you, what I realized is it's really different from real life because it can blow up and strangers are saying things about you and you can't combat it. You can't talk back because you can't reach those people. So I found that I have extraordinary levels of anxiety. Like I'm not an anxious person, but I really have had some, periods of really painful anxiety when things blow up on Twitter. That's part of, it's part of my sort of my inside view of how I'm a social psychologist, and to see what social media does to all of us who are concerned about our reputations is, it's just really sick, the effects it can have on you.
It's unbelievable. I talk to my kids about constantly trying to make mistakes and getting through those mistakes and coming out on the other side and having the resilience, because if you don't make mistakes, you kind of just stay safe.
Yeah,
and,
that's right.
I don't know if children, I don't know if men or women, adults are allowed to make mistakes anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's much more costly for kids because everything can blow up. And, one way, so college professors all over the country have been saying the same thing for 5 or 10 years now, which is we can't get our students to disagree with each other. We can't get a debate going in class. They're afraid to disagree. And I think what's happened is they've grown up in a minefield. So if you imagine, if you literally grew up in like you literally were raised in a place where there were just landmines scattered all around and a bunch of kids got their leg blown off, you would just be really careful where you put your foot. Yeah. And imagine having to grow up where you're really careful about every step you take. That would be terrible.
I know. When I grew up, we had debates and different opinions, and you were this and I was that, and no one cared. And
that's right.
We
but now, if a kid says anything, you never know. It could be taken out of context. Someone could, link it to something else, and before you know it, the whole world is making fun of you. So it's terrible. Growing up on social media is just a really good way to create a fearful, reserved child.
We always ask every guest before they go, if you could give advice to your 10-year-old self, what would it be?
Gosh, that's a good question. I guess it would be, don't worry about the social stuff. That will get better, because I was socially insecure, when I was certainly in middle school, very socially insecure. And I would say, your desire to be a scientist is actually right for you, but consider the social sciences. Like I always wanted to be a scientist when I was a kid. And it turns out that I think the social sciences are just so much more interesting than the natural sciences. That's just me. But so I guess, I'm pretty happy with the way things have turned out. And I guess I would just kind of say, just stay the course. Like you're going to do okay.
Stay the course. You're amazing. Jonathan Haidt. Make sure and follow Jonathan at JonathanHaidt. We're going to put all his clips up on social media, on Lipstick on the Rim. Make sure and follow Emese and I. It was such a pleasure having you on. I have to say, we cannot wait to have you back on, because I think, where we are today is hopefully we can prove where we go tomorrow.
And you've given me a lot of points to go back and argue with my husband and say, well, Jonathan Haidt said this is okay. So you're going to be a big name in my household in the next few weeks.
Brooke Stuber is going to love you. He's going to send you a gift. He's going to Chipotle on his own. So there you go.
Excellent. That's right. Yeah. Let your kids go. And again, I hope everyone will go to letgrow.org and anxiousgeneration.com.
Well,
it's been a real pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you.
I'm especially excited
it.
that you're going to be letting your kids out. That I'm going to hold you to that. All right. More power to you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck
Thank you so much.
with the adventures of parenting. Thanks for having me on.
Have a good rest of the day. Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Lipstick on the Rim with Molly Sims and my ride or die, Emese Gormley. We are so excited to bring you guys along on this journey with us. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Lipstick on the Rim and at Molly B. Sims. Or you can go to my blog where you can dive just a little bit deeper into my favorite products, trends, and more at mollysims.substack.com. And don't forget to check out our video episodes on my YouTube channel, Molly Sims. This podcast is a production with Sony Music. I wanted to give a special thanks to my team, Rosie Cummings, Kenna Ryan, Safin Kevorkian, and everyone at Sony Music. Don't forget to listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss out on the fun.